Welcome in, lacrosse fans and sports bettors alike, to Bet On Lacrosse. That's right, we're back. You can't get rid of us that easy. We're here not only to help you be cashing some tickets, betting the fastest game on 2 feet, we're also aiming every week to make you a better. I'm your host, Dan Alexander. Happy to be back with you. We had a terrific PLL season, and now we're getting a little warmer. We're going indoors. It's time for box lacrosse, and it's time for the NLL Week 2 preview. Joining me today is one of our contributors with Pro Lacrosse Talk. It's my guy, my fellow Philly boy. It's Brian Andrews. Bri, how we doing, man?
Doing great. Really enjoyed last week's slate of games. Our hometown Wings, got a big dub against the expansion team, who was way better than we expected. Super happy about how our best bets from week 1 all cashed out as well.
No, and that's the thing is, I think you and I would both agree. One of the things that we really preach is responsible sports betting. And the same thing that we said when the PLL was first starting up, like, we're going to be here for you, the Bet On Lacrosse team, trying to get you the most up to the minute data that we possibly can. But as seasons are starting out, you know, it's pizza money bets. It's really trying to feel your way out. It's really trying to ascertain where we fit in to the over-unders, to the totals, to the spreads, to the money lines. I think one of the things that I said when we started in the summer with the PLL, and something that I want to stress again as we're here for our first official episode, me and my guy Hutton Jackson behind the scenes producing the show. We did a little preview about the futures market, but this is really the first time we're diving into the nitty gritty. And I think you would agree, Brian, that while we have opinions on some of these games, we're probably not going to suggest that you go and pull off the rubber band to be betting your whole entire bankroll, because we, just like the other fans of the NLL in this betting space, it's new to us, and we're going to try and have the most important data that you can to make the most informed bets that you can. But we're all learning here together through the early part of the season, and probably our stronger opinions are going to come as the season continues. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And also the fact that the teams have just changed so much since they've last played, it's hard to tell who's really going to come out and click immediately. And week 1 didn't help really with any of that.
That's true.
Between all the close games, the multiple overtimes, the underdog covering the spread almost 90% of the time, and the favorite winning 5 out of the 7 games. You can even see that the books are kind of learning as they go, because most of the favorites for the money line, at least on Cool Bet, they're not paying anything for the money line favorite this week. And so they're also being really wary of allowing people to just bet all the favorites and getting a huge payout on that.
Yeah, and that's something that, we're going to try and sift through as we continue here with the season. And also something that I think us in the U.S., huge shout out to CoolBet Canada. Without them, that's really where we get our opening lines from. That's where we start formulating our opinions from. So shout out to the team there. I know Chris Abbott, one of their managers, terrific guy. He's been being as instrumental as he can getting us information, but we're not able to bet it in the U.S. Now, I do want to give a shout out to one of the Twitter users who's been reaching out and interacting with us. You can do so on the Twitter. You can get at me at Newbie Talks. You can get at my man Brian Andrews. Just spell his name backwards, put an @ sign in front of it. Boom, you got him on the Twitter. And of course, you can get us by dropping us a line at Bet On Lacrosse. But we got reached out to by at OG13 Bruin, and he was saying, hey guys, check out Bet US. He apparently dropped a line to them, was able to get up some lines there. So that is an offshore book that you are able to get down on some of these lines for. But, we're still kind of waiting for it to be available on a mainstream sports book, as, the PLL was partnered with DraftKings over this past summer, and you were able to get some lines on BetMGM. We're hoping that that is something that comes along during this season, but still, it's at least encouraging the fact that we're starting to see it. At least the people who are up north in Canada, they're able to bet it on CoolBet, and people are able to get it offshore at Bet US. But you kind of alluded to it there, and something that we want to really drive home to people is checking out and being interested in the Bet On Lacrosse report. It's a betting report that's formulated by my guy right here, Brian, and also a member of our team, Parker. They go through the lines, they look at the totals, and they formulate the most comprehensive betting snapshot of lacrosse that you will find anywhere, folks. And I'm not just saying it because they're on my team. I'm saying it because it's true. You will not find this information anywhere else than the comprehensive Bet on Lacrosse report. And in that report, you were kind of touching the surface there, Brian, about the fact that it was strong parity out of the gate. Maybe not as much on the money line, but if you're looking at the spread, you said around 90%. The exact number is 85.7% was the underdogs against the spread. There were 2 instances where teams got 2.5 points, and both of them covered. One of those teams was Panther City playing our Philadelphia Wings, Bry, and they took them to overtime despite being a 2.5 point dog coming in. So I think definitely on the spread, the books are looking for that sweet spot, but I think it also speaks to the parity of the league. And that's one of the things that you can really see in the Bet on Lacrosse report.
Yeah, and it shows much more than that too. It shows league-wide trends like who's winning the money line, the underdog or the favorite, against the spread. We also have a comprehensive breakdown of the totals, which totals are hitting the most for overs and unders. But it also breaks down teams, their scoring histories, and then even more comprehensively, their matchup history. So as the season goes on, the report only gets more informative for a specific team, and you'll be able to sift through if the books are kind of being conservative in the way that they are. You might be able to sift through and find the best deals that way. Although there's no guarantee.
There is no guarantee. And that's the thing is with sports betting, there is never going to be a guarantee. Even your best plays, folks, are going to lose about 50% of the time. So you can sift through all the numbers all you want, but you still have to be really sticking to that strong bankroll management. Is maybe whenever people ask me, like newbie, like what is your best tip for sports bettors? The number one is for me, only bet with money you can afford to lose, because some of those best plays are still going to lose around 50% of the time. And some of the best sports bettors in the world are trying to just break past that 52%, because then you're beating the VIG, you're beating the juice that you're laying. And if those are new terms to you, don't worry. As the Bet on Lacrosse season continues, we're going to break down exactly what that kind of stuff means. So if you're checking out the Bet on Lacrosse report, Brian, for what it's worth, if people are interested in some of these trends that we're laying out, some of the information that they lay out, they're wondering how they can see it. Do you have an easy way that they're able to reach out to you to maybe be one of the users of this Bet on Lacrosse report?
Twitter is always a great space to get in contact with me, particularly for lacrosse related reasons. Also, we are planning on setting up a landing page on the Pro Lacrosse Talk website. Cool. So when that happens, we will publicize it and you'll be able to find out through Pro Lacrosse Talk and Bet on Lacrosse brands.
For sure. And you can also check out that landing page. It's prolacrossetalk.com/cross-betting. Check out prolacrossetalk.com. For what it's worth, guys, a little pat on the back time. Our Pro Lacrosse best bets, ones that were unanimous picks across the board. How about a cool little 3-0? We correctly predicted the Mammoths money line win. We like the Fire Wolves and the Rocks under 21 goals. And we also like the Bandits, aka the Chaos, but the Bandits to cover the 1.5 point spread. A lot of chemistry coming into the year for those guys. Some of those trends that Brian was alluding to: underdogs 6-1 against the spread, favorites 5-2 straight up. And if you're a total bettor, well, you can just be playing some good old-fashioned overs. Everybody loves an over. Unders a little bit more for the heart palpitations if you like playing unders, like our guy Parker. Man, it's tough. You have to have a strong stomach for that. But with some seemingly low point totals, we saw a healthy amount of overs cash. The over hit in 71% of the week 1 games. Both of the lowest totals of the week, they were 20.5. And both of those hit over. Interestingly enough, the highest total was only about 2.5 points higher of that. That went under. The 23 was the highest total. For what it's worth, this week we have 2 20.5 point totals. That's the Seals taking on the aforementioned Mammoth, and the Swarm taking on the Riptide, a team who you may be hearing a lot about this winter as we continue with our shows, as the Swarm take on the Riptide. That's a 20.5 point total. And we even have a surprisingly 20 flat when you're talking about the Wings and the Riptide, Brian, but the overs were just cashing like crazy, my man.
Yeah, and it was pretty systematic too. All the overs cashed from like the 20 to 22 range. And
Okay.
once you hit the 22 range, it was 2 games were 22 or 21 and a half, and that was 50-50 over under. And then there was only one total above that at 23. And like you said, the under hit there. And so that's something to pay attention to, because that's something that the books seem to have kind of nailed down pretty well. Because even in the games that went over, they didn't go over by too much or too frequently.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to continue, because 1 week sample size, you know what I mean? It's the only data that we have to go off of, you know what I mean? But the more data that you're going to have, the better you're going to be able to have some confidence in these bets. But as Brian said earlier, there are no guarantees, folks. So as we're laying out some of these numbers and what happened with those numbers and those lower totals going over with some regularity, before we get into some actionable information, that's why you're listening to Bet on Lacrosse. Obviously, you like us letting you know what happened the last week, breaking down some of the trends and everything, but you want to know, Brian, Dan, like, just tell me what to bet on and let's do it. So before we get into our best bets, and we do a little something here called the EMO, who doesn't like the plus payouts? You know what I mean? When you get to lay a little, win a lot. So we have a little something here we call the EMO. That stands for extra money opportunities. Each and every week, we're going to give you at least one play from each of us that is a plus money bet that we think is worth a look. So starting on the 10th of December, we got the Toronto Rock taking on the Thunderbirds. Little all Canada affair, little rivalry game, so to speak, up north. You got the Toronto Rock as the 1.5 point underdogs. If you're back in the Halifax Thunderbirds on the spread, you're getting a plus 130 take back on that one. And the total in that game, Rock Thunderbirds, you have a low 21.5, a game you might be hearing about a little bit later. You're definitely going to be hearing about Brian and I's Wings as they're taking on the New York Riptide. The Riptide are 2.5 point underdogs in that game, and the lowest total on the board, you're looking at a 20 point total in the Wings and Riptide game. And the Vancouver Warriors taking on the Panther City Lacrosse Club. You have the Vancouver Warriors as a 1.5 point favorite. They're plus 110 against the spread, and 21 is what you're looking at in the total on that game. You have the Seals taking on the Mammoth. The Seals are 1.5 point favorites, another low total at 20.5 in the Mammoth and Seals game. And you might be hearing about here. You also have the Roughnecks taking on the Rush. That total is a cool 23 points. Highest total on the board this week, and the Rush is your favorite there on the money line. They're minus 182 on the spread. They're minus 1.5, minus 116 if you want to back them against the spread. Finally, you have the Riptide in their second game of the weekend, and the Swarm as well, taking on them, as you're looking at a 1.5 point favorite for the Swarm there, a Riptide on the money line plus 135, and another low total of 20.5. So that is what the spreads are looking like. Again, shout out to Coolbet Canada. That is where we are drawing those lines from. But this is the first time for you, Bri, that you're getting to hear one of our favorite songs here on the Bet on Lacrosse podcast. We're going to get into some actionable info. We got some best bets for you. And whenever you hear best bet on the show, you know that can only mean one thing. Oh, yeah. Simply the best bets, Brian. And you and I both have, well, it's only week 2. So, again, these would be pizza money bets. But there's some angles that I'm liking. And I'll go first with my total. A total that I love. I alluded to it there. It's the lowest total of the week. You talked about how some of these low totals were cashing with some regularity in week 1. I'm going to, or I'll turn the cap around for the folks, the Wings taking on the Riptide. The total, as I said, they're 20 minus 110. I just feel, and again, only week 2, but as the season continues, I feel like scoring may just naturally increase. We saw that while over was the play throughout the PLL. We did see some chemistry. You know, you start getting some of the feel back, some familiarity increases, and the books too probably likely adjust if overs keep hitting. Some of those totals come in a little bit higher. So while we're still getting some of these 20s, some of these 20.5s with regularity, I'm going to try and ride that train at a sheer value point. So the only one game that we have to draw from for both of these teams saw 12 goals for both of them in the Wings and the Riptides. Now, for what it's worth, it did take overtime for the Wings to get there, to get to the 12 goals, but both teams also allowed double-digit goals in week one as well. 11 for the Wings against a new team and 13 for the Riptide against Rochester. So for me, I look at this one, Brian, low total, strong offenses. And again, all my bets to start off the year are probably going to be a little bit more for pizza money, just smaller plays. But the lowest total of the week, I'm looking over 20. Wings, Riptide. Let's get some scoring for our Philadelphia Wings. So that's the look for me for my total best bet. Now, as we were breaking down the board, I'm kind of looking at the lowest total. I think you have a feel on the highest total of the week, Brian. What are you looking at for your best bet?
Earlier in the pod, I brought up the 23 total line from week one, kind of on purpose as a segue to this, because the under also hit last week for the highest total at 23. And this week, the highest total is again 23. And in this case, it's for the Rush versus the Roughnecks, which is really hard to say that. Say that 3 times fast.
That's why I let you do it. I was like, I'm going to let him get the alliteration out.
But the Roughnecks in week one only put up 9. And the Rush held Halifax to 12. The Roughnecks are not Halifax on offense, in my opinion.
Fair.
So I think it's likely that the Rush are going to be able to keep the ball out of their net. On the other hand, Calgary's netminder, Christian Del Bianco, he let up 16, but that's only the 4th time in his entire career that he's done that, and he's normally a really elite netminder in this league. So I think that letting the recency bias of the 16 goals against him is being shown in this total. And I think that that's an over-exaggeration of what the score of this game is going to be, unless the Rush, assuming that the Rush come in form, they just run the table on the Roughnecks and score a ton. But I'm betting against that. So under 23, Rush Roughnecks, minus 110 for me.
So I'm going over the 20. He's going under the 23. So it's the best of both worlds. If you like chocolate, you like vanilla, hey, you get a swirly cone of both of them right there. I also was breaking down before we got into it, and the way that we usually end the show, we give a little EMO. That means an extra money opportunity. And I always look forward to this part because who doesn't like the plus payouts, baby? So whenever you hear the OJs, that's when you know it's EMO time. This is any bet on the board that is a plus money payout. So it could be as low as plus 105. It could be as high as, I think I cashed like a 3-1 ticket for the folks during the PLL season. All bat lead off here for us, because mine might not be as fun as your EMO, but I am looking towards the Toronto Rock as they're taking on the Halifax Thunderbirds in all Canada affair. Plus 110 are the Rock. And if you look at championship odds, Bri, these are 2 of the favorite teams. You're looking at Halifax, they're number 1. They're 4-1 to win the championship. And the Rock, not far behind, they're 5.5 to 1. They are the 3rd best odds to win the NLL championship. And honestly, I think this game is a toss-up pick'em. I look at this game and I think neither team should be getting plus money. You should probably be laying 110 or 105 both ways. And if you wanted to back the Rock on the spread, you're talking about parity. If you wanted to get that extra cushion, you wanted to get that plus 1.5, you'd have to lay minus 159 to do it. So as I look at this game, Bri, sure, one could argue maybe the Thunderbirds had the more impressive win in week 1. It was a 1-goal win against the Rush, and the Rush are a top team as well. But I look at the Rock's 1-goal win against the Firewolves as being just as impressive. And I don't think that the market is reflecting how impressive I think that win was. Because don't forget, before the stoppage in 2020, the Wolves had the best record back in 2020. It seems like ancient history, and I'm not trying to extrapolate that into this season because I'm also cognizant of the fact that the Wolves might have the best goaltender in the league, or at least one of the best goaltenders in the league. So for the Rock, eking out a back and forth win might be more impressive than it looks on first glance. So I personally feel, because of the market view of the Thunderbirds being the odds-on favorite, you're getting some value here on the Rock, on the money line. They looked sneaky impressive, in my opinion, in their win last week. So it's not a giant payout. It's not one that's going to pay your rent 10 times over, but it is an EMO. It's an extra money opportunity. I'm going with the Rock money line plus 110 over the Thunderbirds. Sorry to my friends in Halifax. Andrew McGinnis from Wager Talk. I know you're listening, buddy. I apologize for going against your Thunderbirds, but I'm back in the Rock this week. Where are you going, my man, for your EMO?
Mine's also a money line pick. Last week, Hutton convinced me that the Mammoth was the best pick against the Swarm, and he changed my mind. And I think I'm going to follow suit with that, not to fall into the Monte Carlo fallacy of they were the underdog and they won, so they're going to win again, but more so because I don't really understand the Seals being the favorites in this case. I thought the Mammoth came out, they showed up, they really handled the Swarm. The Seals were also the favorite last week against the Warriors, and I think I was unimpressed with their offensive performance throughout the game. I mean, it was a super low scoring game, and they have a really good defense, but I thought that they were lacking some cohesiveness on offense that may come in week 2. But I thought the Mammoth really showed up in their week 1 game.
Agreed.
And I think they're going to be motivated to take down the Seals as the underdog again. And I think that's a very plausible outcome for plus 125. It looks attractive to me.
Hey, anytime that we're getting plus anything, I'm about it. So we got my man Brian. He's looking at the Mammoth plus 125 for his EMO. I'm looking at the Rock plus 110. Also, Brian is looking at the under 23 in the Roughnecks rush game. I am looking at the over in that aforementioned Wings taking on the Riptide. So that is our wrap up on our bets. And folks, that's our thoughts on the NLL slate. Make sure you drop us a line and tell us your thoughts. You can follow us on social media at Bet On Lacrosse and, of course, at Pro Lacrosse Bets as well. And let us know which team's odds you like the best. And please, folks, if you like the show, make sure you're tuning in throughout the season. Share, like, review. 5-star reviews are what it is all about. It's Bet On Lacrosse. He's Brian Andrews. I'm Dan Alexander. Huge thanks to our man Hutton Jackson behind the scenes, getting the show on the road. We'll be here with you each and every week, breaking down the slates for you. You know what we like. Tell us what you do at Bet On Lacrosse. And we'll talk to you next week. Hope you have a profitable weekend, everybody. And hopefully you're cashing those tickets.